Okay, so I'm excited for what I'm going to share with you. This is a shorter session just to wrap everything up, and I guess also it's going to give you an opportunity to ask any final questions that you may have. Raise your hand, make some noise if you learned a lot of valuable things already this weekend. Very good. And who's maybe learned too much? Who's got excited about a strategy and you're like, that's what I'm going to do. That's what I'm going to do. And then next speaker comes along and then you're like, I'm going to do that. And then another speaker's like, well, I thought I was going to do that, and now I want to do everything. Who feels like that? Okay. So remember, it's a buffet. Are you meant to eat everything on the buffet, yes or no? No, that leads to obesity. Some people are like, oh, now I know why. But anyhow, so the point is, we give you a diverse range of strategies because everyone is different. Because I don't just want to share what I did, because what I did was starting 20 years ago, and if I was starting again, then I might do things in different order. And I've done different strategies, and I have done multiple strategies, and you can do multiple strategies. And we'll just go over that again so you're clear. But if you're only going to do a strategy, you want to look at making sure you have the more basic formulas, what we talked about yesterday, particularly with property, underway, because that is more likely a higher degree of cementing your long-term wealth. And it's also a set and forget type strategy. If you were to say, okay, in the next 2 years, I'm going to buy 2 investment properties or do whatever it takes to get in a position to do that. Once you've done that, that's underway and that will take care of your long-term wealth. Now you've got time to also do the other strategies. Making sense? Okay, but don't make the mistake of some people going for just the short-term cash flow type strategies and neglecting the long-term wealth. Otherwise, you won't get the degree of success that other people have had. Does it make sense? And as I remember, I've seen the patterns. Over 500,000 people now have been educated through 21st century in some way from 17 different countries. And for 15 years I've been doing this, so I know what works and what doesn't. Does it make sense? And then what has the higher degree of success versus the strategies that have a lower degree of success. And that's why I've created that top 10 for you to try and give you more of a guideline. Ultimately, it's up to you what you do. But what is exciting is that you have a variety of choices. And what's also as exciting is that some strategies require capital, which is great for some of you because you have equity in your house, etc. You have some investment capital, and that's great. Other strategies don't really require that much capital, which is great for other people that maybe don't have access to as much capital yet. Making sense? Okay. So what I'm going to do in this session is also go through is teach you a simple, strategy or formula to ensure that you don't lose your wealth. There's no point helping you create wealth to only give it away. Remember, I talked about on the first day, we used Nathan Tinkler as an example, the youngest billionaire in Australia, or was. He has a great skill set for creating wealth, but hasn't yet developed a skill set for maintaining and keeping wealth. Making sense? They're two separate things. So we talked about, and Tim Ferriss talked about that as well, as far as the skill set to remain successful is different to the skill set to become successful. Okay, and especially in wealth, because you see a lot of millionaires will make it, lose it several times before they figure it out. Okay, you kind of want to avoid that. If you're going to make it, don't lose it. Okay. However, if money will come and go, and just like in business, there's business cycles, etc. So I think one of the important things is that you have to accept that sometimes you will lose money. Does it make sense? And that's why we talk a lot about mindset and psychology. That is when when the going gets tough, will determine really how you're going to perform long term. If you spit the dummy and you want to go back into living below the line, remember we talked about blame, excuses, denial. If you stick to the 2-minute rule, then get yourself out of that state. But if you go and live in that state, then you're becoming a victim. Okay, not accepting responsibility, because things can go wrong at times, and there's no guarantee in life. We talked about that. But if you stay above the line where you're accountable, responsible, you take massive action. And jot this down, you simply test and what? Test and measure. So remember when I started the first day, I talked about really, all I'm going to teach you is really strategic, intelligent strategies, and overall it's just common sense. Raise your hand if you agree that a lot of the stuff we've been talking about is common sense. Who would also agree it's actually much simpler than you thought? Okay? Now, simple, not necessarily easy. So I'm not here to say, it's easy. Not necessarily easy, but it is simple, and I think there's a difference. You have to understand that. So it doesn't have to be this complex formula that a lot of people thinking the map of the world is success is hard work and struggle. So they're looking for something that matches that map of hard work and struggle. If something doesn't seem like hard work and struggle, they go, sounds too good to be true, probably is, or it doesn't compute for them. So that's why we talked about that cultural hypnosis and that cultural conditioning. And like the elephant, that gigantic elephant that could walk easily away from that tiny rope that's pegging them to the ground, but because they've been conditioned by pain over enough time, then they're no longer willing to break out and be free, even though they could be. And that's what happens to humans, especially, raise your hand if you've lost some money in the past. Who's lost some money in the past? Yep. So that generally, raise your hand if that's been a negative emotion for you at the time. Most people don't go, yeah, I lost some money, I lost 100 grand today, I'm going to go out and celebrate. No one likes losing money, but remember when we talked about humans will do more to avoid what? Than to gain. And as a result of that, that explains why most people in Australia are not as rich as they could be, because they'll do more to avoid losing money than they will to gain or make money. That's human psychology, and we looked at that also, how we rewire our subconscious mind. I talked about how my mentor did an intervention just in a conversation. You know, if you're not saving money, you can't live your dreams, and that was a catalyst and turning point for my financial success, because I rewired what I linked pain and pleasure to. Saving, working, investing, I now link pleasure to. You know, so I don't have to use willpower to force myself to act. Does that make sense? I am naturally driven. I would be lucky to have one day a year where I'm not motivated, okay? And if I'm not feeling motivated to do anything, I'll just take the day off and not try and force myself to do something. I'll just give myself a break, chill out. And I think, rather than, you've got to be able to work with what's working for you. Or then you look at it and go, okay, well, what's 5 things I can be grateful for? How can I look at this differently? Why am I feeling this way? And then you can start to be a detective, I guess. And when you remember the triad, now you know what determines how you feel at any given time. So you become, jot this down, I guess what I'm teaching you is how to become a practical psychologist. There's plenty of psychologists in the world, but once again, most of them are being taught theory at university, and that can be academically valuable. But as far as being a results-driven psychologist, you would have a lot more skill set just in the last 3 days about psychology of humans and the ability to create change in others than most psychologists would get in 3 or 4 years at university. Does that make sense? Because this is very practical-based psychology. And the way you develop that skill set is now that you have an awareness of how your brain operates, how the triad works with your emotions and how you feel, as you now can be able to use that on yourself to self-motivate yourself, then you automatically know how other people behave and why they behave that way. Does it make sense? So what you'll find is your interpersonal skill set and relationship building skill sets should increase dramatically. And I find humans fascinating. I'm a big believer in people. I believe that most people do the right thing if given the chance, and I believe people are capable of a lot of extraordinary things. And that's probably, I guess, why I'm an educator. I didn't really believe that people could achieve, then it'd really be a big waste of my time. Does it make sense? But I truly believe, and I've had so many references that I'm fortunate in my life today, there wouldn't be a day that goes by that I don't get a Facebook message, email, or a card or a present of some sort sent to me thanking from someone from Australia or New Zealand or around the world these days of how my works positively changed their life. Or if I go to airports, I'll get pulled up, or restaurants, and people come and say, hi, I just want to thank you, Jamie. I read your book, I watched your DVD, and it completely changed my life. This happens all the time now. I can even go to India or Russia, and the same thing happens. I get people going, I've got this fans in Russia that just want to meet you because I put on my Facebook I'm there or something, and they just want to come and meet you because, especially in third world countries, emerging countries, they're so hungry. They really value this knowledge, and sometimes in maybe Western nations we take a little bit for granted, because we have a lot more opportunity. But I really admire that. And I remember being on Russian TV, and they knew that I was there, so they wanted to interview and wanted me to share. How can you help? What should the average Russian do? What can they do to expand their wealth, etc. And it was the same principles. I used the example. I said, like, what you want to do is that you want to find anything you want to do is probably been done before. What you want to do is go onto Google if you want to start a business idea or whatever it is, and see if someone's done it before. I get sent a lot of proposals. I invest in startups, and I invest with the likes of Tim Ferriss. Tim. For those who are familiar with Tim Ferriss, New York Times bestseller, and he's been a very successful startup investor. He invested early stages of Facebook, Twitter. He's involved in Shopify, TaskRabbit, heaps of other startups. So he's had incredible success rate. So an example, so what I say, same thing I teach, say, on Russian TV as what I would teach, the same principles apply. It doesn't matter what language you speak. Immediately in certain economies, there's different strategies and different opportunities. But property, as an example, in Russia is a phenomenal opportunity because you're getting rampant growth, Eastern Europe, etc., where people have made a lot of money. People that are entrepreneurial, especially coming out of communism, it creates two types of people. Really good entrepreneurs in Russia, and because they're catching up rapidly, like same in China, what's happened for us since World War II, over 60 years, is what's happening in Russia and China is happening like maybe 20 years. So the chance to create wealth is far more rapid. To become a billionaire in Russia has been more possible than, say, in other countries. But there's a lot of other people that are institutionalized through communism. And what institutionalized is that they've lived off government handouts in the past, they can't think for themselves, and they're so dependent and rely on someone to take care of them. Does that make sense? In Australia, we have a high welfare element. A lot of people wanting that welfare, wanting someone to take care of them. And God help you if you needed the government to take care of you. It's not a good place to be. And I don't believe in that philosophy. I believe people are strong, and people should be challenged to grow. And we should only be passionate and help those that can't help themselves. Others should be able to help themselves. Does it make sense? We should be encouraged and inspire them to do that. But ultimately, we are responsible human beings. Is that true? And you guys are leaders in society. It's not you guys and people like yourself that are self-motivated making a difference to society, then who is? You know what I'm saying? I believe in a rich country, if we have the financial intelligence and capability, that we have a moral obligation to make more money than you need just for yourself. Does it make sense? Because you're in a rich country, you should take advantage of that, make as much money as you can, as much abundance as you can, and then direct that through contribution to activities or causes or charities or things that you believe in. Does it make sense? And you'll also find by doing that, you'll have a far more compelling life and you'll be far more fulfilled. Is that true? Because we looked at the 6 human needs, and we know that the 2 most important ones of the 6 human needs as far as being fulfilled are what? Growth and contribution. And we also looked at the reason people that might be, quote, culturally successful in Western society, that might have what's outwardly material success, but if they're not fulfilled, the biggest reason is they're driven by which one of those 6 human needs? Significance. And you'll see people that they get all the things they think they want, but they're not fulfilled. It's because they're too driven by significance, not enough by contribution and growth. And this is all very simplistic, but if we apply it to our life, it makes a huge difference to our life. It also makes a huge difference to your motivation and desire. If your motivation is just small and it's just about you, you don't have that drive to push through the tough times. But if your motivation is about a cause or a purpose or a mission that you believe in, then you'll go through that. You'll be more committed, more dedicated, because it's not about you. It's about you have to make it happen, because a lot of people, it can make a big difference. Do you know what I'm saying? It doesn't mean you have to have a purpose or mission to want to change the world. Your purpose or mission might be just be the greatest mum on the planet, okay, or the greatest dad, or the greatest brother, or the greatest carpenter. Whatever it is, but you want to be the best you can be in that. Does that make sense? So that's very critical. So the point I was sharing on Russian TV was that you simply find a model that's been done successfully before, then that gives you a certainty that it can work. Then your job is to add value to that idea or improve on the idea and add your personality to it. Does it make sense? In other words, what is the point of us reinventing the wheel? If humanity continually forgot that the wheel was invented and went back and tried to reinvent it over and over again, we don't make progress, do we? If the wheel's being invented already, then to evolve humanity, we should be going, okay, how do we make a better wheel, or faster wheel, or more effective wheel? Does it make sense? That's what you should be thinking about. So many, that's what I was saying with Tim first. A lot of people, because I do invest in startups, send me proposals, and a lot of them, some of the list of questions I have my team go back to them are just standard as far as, okay, if you want investors to invest in you, for starters, what have you, is there a model of this? Is there another company that has done this before? And so in other words, what I'm looking for is what evidence do you have that this idea is going to work? Now, a lot of people think it's really good that no one else has done it before. Does it make sense? They're thinking, oh, I've got a unique idea that no one's ever done. Is that going to attract investors, yes or no? Yeah. That is not a good idea, okay? You want to track something, you want an idea that someone has done something similar and you're going to make it better. I'll give you an example. One of my friends and former CEO of 20th Century Education, he contacted me, and this is a classic case of an investment that missed out on making a lot of money. He contacted me not that many years ago and said, after he finished working with me, he said, Jamie, there's this company in America called Groupon. Now, Groupon these days, everyone knows about, the daily deal site. And back then, no one knew about it. It's a little bit like Bitcoins, you know what I'm saying? In the sense that the masses don't really know about it yet. And he said, what I'm going to do is that he was raising capital, and he'd done it before. He'd built and sold a few companies before that. So he's a successful entrepreneur. And he'd worked with me because we're going to take one of my companies public on the ASX before the credit crisis hit. And he said, I believe I'm setting up a company to replicate and do what Groupon does in Australia. So he was able to raise up to $5 million very rapidly. He offered me $500,000 for 10% of the company. And I considered it at the time, but I decided at the time that I invested that in another business, in buying a whole business, a publishing company, which subsequently went down in value substantially. So that $500,000, in the short term, I lost money. I eventually made money from it, but anyhow, I caught up with him maybe less than 2 years later. And when I sat down with him when he did the pitch, I gave him ideas. I said, change this. If that's the way industry works, this is what's going to happen. This is what I would do. And he thanked me later. He said, those ideas you gave made it successful. And he said, by the way, I've just sold my company to Living Social for a total of $300 million. And your 10% share, I think, was going to be worth something like $30 million if I had it followed through with the investment. So that was a good lesson to sometimes maybe not, maybe to decide where but sometimes you invest elsewhere and you don't always get the return. But then again, in saying that, that company that I bought is now part of one of my media companies, and long term that will probably have a similar result. So, but that was a classic case, 24 months. All he did was take an idea that was working in America and replicated it. Change it for Australia. I forget the name of the company now. You probably would have remembered it. It was bought by Living Social. And you follow daily deal sites. I can't remember the name now. But we had him speak at our business event last year. So it's on DVDs if you ever want to learn about business. My point is, though, it's the same principle. So stick to the basics. So it's same with property. So property, stock market, whatever it is. So I had Nick share today. So if you want to model that, you got someone to model a system, a formula to model. So it saves a lot of time of making errors. So Andrew would have learned, about Forex example. I've known Andrew for years. So, I mean, he's evolved in his career. He's been very successful at that. So it's having those models, so you can go off, saves a lot of time. Okay, and that's all I've done. I will go and find people and learn off them. Or if it's business ideas, you don't have to find the people. You just go onto Google and find the other companies and see what they're doing and what's working and how can you learn from that and what can you take and how can you make something better. Making sense? So there's so many people in Australia that have made so much money by simply going to America. They'll go to America just on a holiday, on a field research trip, and they will look around and see what's working. And they'll go, wow, that's working. Wonder if that would work in Australia. And in most cases it will, because Australia is very similar markets in a lot of ways. And they'll bring the idea back here and they'll make a fortune. I mean, is that really hard? I'll give you an example, Bunnings. Bunnings is a group of people, went to America, modelled Home Depot. Okay? Now, they can't rip off the name Home Depot, they'll get sued. So they come up with a new name, Bunnings, which is just a big hardware store, move it to Australia and start at Bunnings. Is Bunnings a successful business, yes or no? Yeah. I don't know what its market value is, but it's a multi-billion dollar business today, okay? Is that complex? Incredibly simple. Go to an idea, see it working, bring it out here. I remember being offered the rights to Nando's before it first came to Australia. But fast food wasn't my industry. I remember a good friend said, "I've got the rights. Do you want them?" You know, and that would have been a very successful investment. And that's what I say. So in Russian TV, I was talking to, I said, I'll use that as an example. I said, in America, you'd want to go and research in China or America and find successful businesses if you want to start that. I said, there's this company in Home Depot called Home Depot, and in Australia, they modeled it and called it Bunnings. I said, if I was in Russia, that's what I'd be looking at, sort of investments like that you can find. And then they said, actually, there's someone that has copied Home Depot, and they've just launched it in Russia, Doma or something it's called. So switched-on entrepreneurs have done that sort of thing. What's really exciting about the world today is the internet. It's a level playing field, and you now live in a time where you do have the chance to have tremendous abundance. I mean, what's great about our country, we have a great property market where you can make some solid wealth without doing anything too complex. And now you have the great opportunity with the internet, whether it's blogging or whether it's, with Jono, was Jono good? Who enjoyed Jono? Yeah. Okay. When I come in, I told the team extend his counter by 15 minutes. We'll see if we can get some more info out of him. Because Jono's not a professional speaker, he's just a mate of mine that have been good mates for years, and he does a lot of different businesses, but he's very switched on. And he's one of my advisors. So if there's anything to do with the internet or social media or anything like that, I'll run it by Jono, and he has the answers. I mean, he's always someone that's just happy to give value and happy to help. And I think that's, people are like that and are generous. That's why they're successful, because they're happy. And you should be doing the same. You should be happy to help your friends and share knowledge and just generally help them for the sake of it. And that's how I built a large amount of friendships and a very big network around the world, is because I'm focused on always how can I add value. Does that make sense? I'm not like saying how can I make money from this. I'm about how can I add value regardless, okay? And I have a good friend in LA. He's from Australia. He's doing very well, started the company up over there. And he's like that all the time. He's always focused when you catch up with him, you should check out this company, check out this will be really good for you. So people that are focused on how they can add value for no monetary return, just because that's who they are. Does that make sense? And if you're like that, you'll build a network and you'll build a following. The challenge what most people do on the internet and in business is that they just want to, they want to close the deal on the first date. Does it make sense? And is that generally a good idea, yes or no? No, not if you want a longer term relationship. If you just want short term relationships, maybe. The point is though, you wouldn't do that in social relationships or intimate relationships, so don't do it in business. And that's the most commonest error people make on the internet or whatever, even their websites. They're trying to make people buy as soon as they come to the site. Why? The whole site should be all about an opt-in so people join the list. So then you can communicate with them over time and build a relationship. Then what you should be doing is adding massive value to them, great content articles or free giveaways, or you're adding value to them. Because they may not be the person that might become a client of the website, but they may know someone is. And you shouldn't use your friends necessarily to sell your friends. You should use your friends. Your friends are happy to help you. Use your friends to refer you if you start a new business. Say, look, I've started this new business. If you know anyone that might be interested in it, can you let them know? Your friends will happily refer people. And it's always better doing what's called indirect sell. Does that make sense? Indirectly. And these are just simple things that you can learn with the internet. I'm not going to go and do a business seminar now, but we have we do have a business program. But it's really just a mindset shift and a way you go about doing things to be more effective. Make sense? So let me go through a couple of things for you. This is important as far as financial management. I cover this in the home study and the DVDs. And I don't know, some of you haven't watched the home study yet. So this program is really designed based on that you've studied the DVDs before you get here, okay? So if you're feeling like some things you don't fully understand, there's a lot more of it on the home study, making sense? Like generally I would cover a lot of share renting. I didn't cover any of that. I let Nick cover it. But on the home study, there's like hours and hours of me covering that strategy in detail, or selling insurance, etc. And a lot of strategies that we don't necessarily fit into because the events evolve. So if you ever, and what's good about DVD is that you can watch it over and over again. So if you don't quite get something, you watch in a seminar, you can't sort of imagine if everyone had a remote control. Some of you would be like, fast forward this, heard this before. Yep, stop here. Others I'd be like, can we rewind and go over that again and again? So it'd be very difficult in the room because you imagine everyone would be fighting, like who's pausing, stopping, rewinding, fast forwarding. But DVDs at home, you can do that. So what we're going to look at is, jot this down, it's called the baby bucket principle. Once again, quite simple, but it's very important. Okay? So what we're going to do is draw 4 buckets. And this strategy is designed to ensure you never lose all your wealth, okay? Is that important to have a strategy to do that? So you never lose all your wealth. And it's also designed to help you get into a position as quickly as possible where you can afford to lose some money. You're saying, Jamie, that's not that exciting to me. Let me think about it. Jot this down. The sooner you can get in a position where you can afford to lose some money is the sooner you'll become rich. Does that make it a bit more exciting for you? The sooner you can get in a position where you can afford to lose some money, the sooner you'll become rich. Make sure you jot that down. If this is all you learnt this weekend financially, that would be incredibly valuable to you. Now, what do you mean, Jamie? I don't want to lose money. Well, exactly. If you can afford to lose some money, you're less likely to lose it because you're unattached emotionally to it. If you're like, I'm going to go and buy Bitcoins because I heard Jamie speaking about it and he's fairly bullish on it and he sees opportunity in it, and I'm going to go and borrow 10 grand on my credit card. I don't have any money. It's my last throw of the dice, and I'm going to take a speculative bet, and you're saying, I hope it goes up because this is my last chance. I'm bankrupt if it doesn't work. Is that a good strategy, yes or no? No, that's like, it's risky, and if you accepted the risk, it would be fine because you'd be unattached to it. But if you're like hoping and praying, remember it's not God's job to have you wealthy. God's job is to give you a body and ability to think, and then you create your wealth. So praying and hoping, you've lost the game because now you're giving your energy away to something you don't control. Instead of you go, you know what? Say Bitcoin as an example. I like Bitcoin and I can afford to lose $10,000. The upside is if it goes to 10,000, it's 1,000 now, say, then I'm going to make 100,000. If it goes to 100,000 in the next few years, then I'm going to make $1 million. Is that right? 10,000, yeah, to $1 million. So, therefore, if I can afford to lose 10,000, I'm willing to place that effectively a bet to some degree. Okay, does it make sense? Then you can go, well, if it doesn't, if it drops to half the price, I can live it. It drops to 0. I don't want that to happen, but can I handle it? Who's following what I'm saying now? If you're in that position, then you're setting yourself up for success, more likely to succeed. Okay, because now you're unattached and you're accepting what can happen. It can go to 0, it can go up to 10,000, it can go up to 100,000. You're accepting that. You're not trying to now control something you don't control. No one controls it. But what you've done is go, okay, I've made a calculated decision. I know there's risks to everything. I'm going, what I can do is now weigh that investment risk up to maybe something else I could do with that $10,000. Do you know what I'm saying? So now it's risky compared to what? You could say, well, I'm not going to do anything with $10,000. I'm just going to spend it and waste the $10,000 because I don't have focus. And over the next few years, I'll probably blow $10,000 just on consumables. Do you know what I'm saying? You say, well, there's a risk to that as well because you could go, well, I could have put it into Bitcoin and now look where Bitcoin is. Instead, I've just wasted it. So most people that are trying to avoid risk are people that are actually taking on a huge risk financially because they can never catch up. They need to win lotto, as I gave the example yesterday of person A and person B with 2 properties. Person A that just paid off their home loan because they didn't want to take the risk of borrowing against their house would now need to win lotto to catch up to person B who had the same income, same opportunity. And so there is a risk to everything. Does that help you make a better decision? Because now you're just being a Warren Buffett. You're just going, calculate it, And that's how I make the decision. So I'm happy to go and keep on buying Bitcoin as it keeps on going up. Because, I'm happy to take that risk. Okay? So if you want to know, yes, I bought more Bitcoin a few days ago. I'll buy more Bitcoin tomorrow morning. Okay? Actually, they'll buy it tonight if they can. Otherwise, they'll buy it tomorrow morning. Do you know what I'm saying? And am I worried if it drops back to a couple of $100? No. What do you think I will do if it drops back a couple of $100? I'll be pouring a hell of a lot more into it, okay? You know what I'm saying? I would love that, because if it does, I doubt whether it'll stay down very long, okay? But that's because that's my understanding. I have a degree of certainty, and I'm happy to take that risk, okay? I'm not going to bitch and moan if it goes to zero. It's like, well, no, I knew that could happen before I did it. So you accept that up front, okay? But the more educated we are, the more we can preempt what's likely to happen. So all we're doing is stacking the odds in our favor. Because I have a certain amount of knowledge, but anyone can get that knowledge. A certain amount of understanding of human psychology as well, a certain amount of understanding of the history of money and what's at stake here and the potential of something, as opposed to most people have no idea and are fearful or cynical and just go, it's going to be a Ponzi scam or whatever, and just unknowledgeable about it, and they try and push their agenda on people. Or you've got other people that are just greedy and just total speculators and not really being smart about it. Okay? So what we're going to do here is what we're trying to do is get ourselves in a position where we can afford to lose some money. So who can tell me what before we do that, let's cover this one very quickly. This is actually in the home study. So first of all, we start off with a big bucket. So if you haven't done this exercise, it's very valuable. We don't cover it in this event, but it's actually on the home study. Okay, and it's in the manual. So what we do is that we create a wealth bucket. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And what we do is this is your financial plan, I guess. Do this process, it's in the manual. But it's to work out how much you need, invest it at a certain rate of return to never need to work another day in your life again. Or then and all the different levels. So most people don't know what their targets are. So this is one of the first things that I did 20 years ago, right? So can anyone tell me what the first level is? There's 5 levels. So the first level is actually protection. The second level is security. So jot this down. First level is financial protection. I'll cover this quickly for you. What that means, and this is how I started. Financial protection is basically having 3 or 6 months worth of liquid cash reserves aside that if you lost your job, you could afford to continue to live for 3 to 6 months. That's all it is. It's just putting a bit of a buffer aside. For me, when I did this, I needed about $2,000 a month, 20 years ago to, survive. So therefore, I worked out one of my first financial goals was $2,000 a month times 3 months aside. I needed $6,000. If I could just get some $6,000 spare buffer aside, I could sleep a bit better at night. Do you know what I'm saying? I can just relax a little bit. I don't get any income coming in from my new job because I was on contract only. Then I'm not freaking out. I can survive. Worst case, I can survive, so I can be free to focus on growing my future, growing my income. Making sense? See how this works from a psychology viewpoint? If I had no money aside or couldn't save any or was spending too much, I would be on edge all the time. I'd be stressed and I would be pushing energy out there, which is pushing money away from me, which is pushing and that's what most people are doing. They're pushing the wealth flowing to them because the psychology they're in. So that's what I did. Then the next level is financial security. Jot that down. And when you do this exercise, you'll be able to work out the exact amount it is. Financial security is basically having enough money coming in off your investments that you'll never ever have to work to cover your shelter or food or basic living. So it's not like a great retirement. It'd be better than the pension. In other words, enough money coming off your investments that you'd be living better than the pension. Okay, so for me, I think it might have been, back then might have been $3,000 a month. So that would have been, say, $36,000 a year. And then I'd have to work out how much would I need, invest it, to generate that. If I was making 10% return on my investments on average portfolio, then if I was doing 10%, I would need how much invested? $336,000 a year, I'd need $360,000. Capital base, $360,000 portfolio at 10% rate of return per year would generate $36,000. Does that make sense? If it's 5% is all you're confident of getting in a rate of return, well then you need double that. If it's 20% you're confident of getting, then you only need half that. And that's what I'm going to allude to in a moment. That why financial education is worth a lot of money to you. So the next level up is easy. The next level is financial independence. This is the most common one you'd be aware of. So this one's simple. Let's say you earn $50,000 a year right now, then you need $50,000 a year to replace your income. Okay? If you're getting 10% rate of return, then that's $500,000 in capital. So you're building the bucket so you can start to fill it in. You can put this on a big piece of cardboard. You start to fill it in. So as you progress, you can see which level you're coming up to. Okay. The next level is financial freedom. So this is the next level up where you're going, okay, when I retire one day, I don't just want to have the same income as now. I'd like a nicer income. I'd like to maybe have a second home on the coast somewhere. I might like to have a boat. I might like to have a couple of overseas trips a year. So you add all that up, and in the manual it actually gives you examples of how much it costs to pay for these things. So you don't have to pay cash for a new home, you'd finance it. A boat, you'd finance it. So when you've got money coming in passively, then you don't need to pay cash. You shouldn't be paying cash for your lifestyle. You can finance it. So when you break it down, you don't need that much. You don't need to come up with all this cash. You just need to have, so it works out in the manual for you how much is a second home, depending on how much you want to spend. How much is that going to cost you per month? A boat, how much is that going to cost you a month? A nice car, how much is that going to cost you a month? So let's say in this case it's $100,000 a year. Well, let's say $150,000. So you say, I could have a decent life if I retired and I had 150 grand coming in per year from my investment. It's not super rich, but I could live okay, as an example. Whatever your figures are. That means at 10% rate of return, how much would you need invested? 1.5 million. 10 times that. Making sense? So then the top one is absolute financial freedom. What is it? Absolute financial freedom. So this is really cool. This is basically saying, if I won lotto, this is what I'd want to have. Okay? So this is where you actually calculate every possible dream, financial dream that you want on the planet. Okay? Then the manual has all examples for you, so you can calculate how much each of these dreams costs. So this might be a case of you not only want a nicer second home, you might want a bigger boat, nicer cars, more overseas trips. You might even want a private plane. Okay, you might even want a farm. You might want to have a home in the snow. Whatever it is, you might want a $2 million Tiffany ring. Okay, you might want an extraordinary shoe collection. You might want to buy Cadbury Dairy Milk Chocolate Factory. Whatever it is. But you actually work it out. And here's what you find. Most people never do this because they go, the subconscious going, why would I even calculate how much all this costs because it's never going to happen? If you actually fill this out and write this down, it does something very powerful to your subconscious mind, because you'd only do that if part of you believed at some point it might be possible, even if you don't believe now. And you've got to understand the power of writing something, taking it from the spirit world and putting it on paper. You're taking something spiritually and putting it on a physical plane. Humans have the capacity to do that. That's being alive. You have that gift to do that. There's something magic about doing that, and because it helps manifest and create things. And even if you don't believe it, just do it. Write down what you want and do this exercise, and you'll find the chance of it showing up one day in your future is so much higher. Actually, sometimes even you forget about your goals. Have you ever done that where you've written things down and then a couple of years later you find your old piece of paper, what your goals were, and you realize, my God, I've achieved most of these things. Even if you forget about your goals, sometimes they'll show up. So have some fun with this. So it's pretty much everything you want. So for me, I wanted to have farms and I wanted to have a house in the snow in Queenstown. I wanted to, have different businesses. I wanted to have a nice big boat. I wanted to have multiple homes. So I worked all that out, okay? and I knew how much it was. And it wasn't as much. Here's what you'll find when you do it, it's not as much as you think. You actually don't need as much money as you think to live every dream you can imagine. And how powerful is that for the subconscious? Because most people think, oh shit, I need tens of millions of dollars, so they never actually get started. When you realize the goal is far more achievable and realistic, you're more motivated to take action. Okay, so it's a very good exercise to do. Who's willing to do this as some homework? Okay, later tonight. Sometime in the next week, okay? It won't take you long. So let's say you need it, $500,000 to fund your dream holidays. That means you need $5 million at 10%. Make sense? In capital. Depends what it is for you. Some people have really big dreams. Does it make sense? So what we then do is we take this big bucket and break it down into the baby buckets. Okay? So what we're going to call these, the first bucket is called what? Growth. Okay? First bucket is called, the first bucket is security. The second bucket is growth. Okay, they're different names. We're dividing this up. So first bucket is security. Second bucket is growth. What's the third bucket? Does anyone know? Momentum. Those who've done your homework. Momentum. And what's the last bucket? Lifestyle. Okay. Which bucket should you fill up first? Lifestyle or security? Okay, so how many people go to the snow in Victorian Alps or whatever, or New South Wales Alps or Queenstown and get all excited? They haven't bothered taking care of their financial retirement yet, and they'll go and buy a ski home. That ski home is a lifestyle investment. Does that make sense? So it shouldn't be the first investment you do. And people that generally bought them in Australia have lost money in the short term at least. And actually now they've dropped down a lot through the credit crisis. Unless it's an investment. So I bought a ski home in Queenstown many years ago, and ironically, it actually made a lot of money. It was because I bought it after there'd been a crash. It's probably late 90s, and it went up in value. So some of your dreams actually make you money. So, and then I could holiday let it out and get good rentals. So, and what's really cool is that your dreams you think are going to cost you money actually end up making you money. Same with farms. I bought a lot of farms, so it was a hobby/investment. So it wasn't totally lifestyle, but it was a lifestyle element to it. But long term, those farms will make money. They haven't yet. Okay, been 7, 8 years. But yeah, I believe in the Asian food crisis, and long term, they'll make capital growth. I mean, rural properties. That's why you find most wealthy people own a lot of rural land. Okay, because long term, they tend to go up in value. Cash flow wise, they're fairly cash intensive, but even though they're part lifestyle, they also can make you money. So security is more, what's a typical security type investment? What goes in this bucket? Cash, gold, insurance, the basic liquid type assets. So it's not really it's just having some money aside. The real basic, security. Okay. Give me an example. Then what you want to do is start filling up your growth bucket. What's some examples of growth investments? Now, remember, this is subjective. There's no black and white. This is your baby bucket, so you can actually decide what it is, but I will give you some guidelines, okay? But yell out some investments you think would belong in your growth bucket. Property, so say residential property. Yep, you definitely would. That would be considered growth. So what you find is security is high risk or low risk. Low risk. What about return? High return or low? Low return. Growth is going to be more medium return, and it's going to be higher risk than security. Making sense? So you're getting a higher return, but you're taking a little bit higher risk. So residential property. Yep. What else? Art, probably wouldn't put art there. That would be it's more of a collectible, it'd generally be higher risk. What else? Investing in yourself, yeah. What else?
Angel investing.
No, angel investing would definitely not be growth investment. Okay, that would be the next bucket because it would be considered speculative. Bitcoins. Would Bitcoins be growth or the next one I'll give you, because the next one is momentum, right? So the next one is higher risk, but higher return, okay? Higher risk, but higher return. So where would Bitcoins go? It would generally, it's up to you, but generally it would be momentum. Why? It's a speculative investment. Down the track, it may change to being, if it becomes widely accepted and more common and stabilizes as a price, it may then become a growth investment. But definitely, it's a speculative investment. Speculative investments go in momentum bucket. Why? Higher risk, but higher return. Making sense? Growth is residential property, maybe some stocks, but generally they would even be in generally momentum. Okay. Yeah, that would generally be generally a momentum strategy. Okay. However, in some of the things you've learnt this weekend, it's actually more conservative than typical market, so you could pull them back a little bit. What else? Forex. Where would you put Forex? Yeah, definitely momentum. Yell out, what other investments are you not sure of, you know of that you're not sure where they would go?
Education.
Well, education is more investing in yourself, yep. Businesses would be momentum, unless it's maybe an internet business that's low cost, that's not costing you anything, that would be growth. Traditional business, would definitely be momentum. It's higher risk. People lose a lot of money in traditional business often. Any others? Commercial property, where would you put that? Well, once again, it depends on your risk appetite as well. If you're a sophisticated investor, you could probably say growth. But if you haven't done it before or going to do it, might be momentum until you get good at it. Okay, it's probably more momentum because if you lose the tenant, it's a lot more risk to it. Okay, so it's not typical. US property. For most people starting out, it'd be momentum. It's a bit more speculative. If you get good at it or you get more confident in the markets, some of them would be growth. Fair enough? Okay, so it's going to vary. But if you're first starting out, it'd certainly be considered a speculative investment. Okay, you're getting higher returns, but until you get comfortable with it, for the suburbs and the cities for sure, then it's momentum. What other strategies? Some of you did e-minis in the past. Where would that be? That would be momentum. Is there any other financial strategies? Where would gold go? Yeah, I guess it depends with gold what you're buying it for. If you're buying it as a hedge, it would be security. Okay? Which is interesting with Bitcoins because a lot of people are buying it as a hedge. So if you're buying it as a hedge, it's still more of a high risk security. Okay, because it's very volatile at the moment. Even gold, though, is a little bit volatile at the moment. It's going back in value. But if you're buying it as a hedge where you don't care if you don't make money on it and you accept it could go down, it would be there. If you're buying it to speculate, then you jump it over here. Making sense? Yep.
We should put the blogging business in growth as it's a low-cost business. So it's probably going to force you to grow.
Yeah, blogging would be, because you don't need, it's a low capital, so you put internet-type ones would be here. If they're a franchise or like traditional business, high capital, they'd be over here, definitely. Yep. Yep. Generally, there'd be momentum. There'd be some, you might say, CBA or something like that. Or actually now the Australian banks would all be, overseas, they consider them speculative. There'd be some that you might pull back to growth. And then there's different sections. You might have some that this side of growth and this side of momentum. Does that give you an idea? The goal is so you can spread more out. A lot of people just want to jump straight to here and take the higher risk stuff. When you want to be taking care of growth, that's when I talk about the formula for property. Long term, that's taken care of there. Now you can afford to do a little bit more stuff over here. Because if it doesn't work out, you've still got your fundamental long-term play in place. Making sense? And you've still got some liquidity here. And you're saving money and continue to put money aside and build your incomes. And the more income you earn, the more you can put into this. And lifestyle would be the last bucket to start filling up. Where most people, the mistake they make is they get a higher income, they go and buy a bigger house, a bigger car, they have to work to pay off that debt. They've trapped themselves into work. When we don't want to do what Nathan Tinkler did, he made even $1.2 billion. He went and spent it all, $300 million on horses. That was his hobby. Okay. Nice to have $300 million to spend on your hobby, but what if he just spent $200 million on a hobby and put $100 million into solid investments? I bet you he wish he had done that now. He could have still had a lot of fun with $200 million in horses. And that's the difference. But because he spent most of it, the comment I'd make is that when you need to know when you won the game. Okay, if you won the game, take your money off the table. How many people, because entrepreneurs are often more risk adverse, so they take a risk to make a lot of money, but then they continue doing that and they often lose their money. Okay? Billabong, who's heard of Billabong? Now, one of the founders of Billabong was worth, I think, $700 million at one point. And he invested $500 million, I think it was, I don't know exact figures, something like that, into a Chinese supermarket company. Lost a lot. So he'd already made his fortune, right? If you've made your fortune, why would you go and take a high-risk speculative investment with most of it? Is that smart, yes or no? Maybe with $50 million, because that's the money he could afford to lose, why would you risk? If you've won the game, you don't then go and risk the whole lot. That's greed, stupidity, and a lot of people fall for it, okay? You go, let's say with Bitcoin. Let's say you invested $10,000 and it tripled in value, you've now made $30,000. Could you go, I'm going to take my 10 grand now off the table and keep 20 in there? Now, can you lose, yes or no? Can't lose. You're protected. So you can still, that's how you be smart. You got your money back, can't lose. Now you can afford to run it, okay? So that's what we want to look at as far as being smart. When you've won the game, like Nathan Tinkler had, who thinks at 1.2 billion he'd won the game? Okay, he had won the game, but didn't take enough off the table. Okay, immediately there was a cold downturn, etc., and some things outside his control, but he would have had the chance to take a lot of cash off the table before that. I'm sure they estimate he's still got 50 million left, but he could have took a lot more off the table. So we just want to be smart about it. That's where fear and greed it doesn't interfere with it. Now this sounds a little bit basic, but is it important, yes or no? Yes. It's very important, and that's why I've covered it in the last session for you, because you just want to maximize the things working for you long term. Okay? Okay, I'm just going to take a couple of moments to hear from some people. I'd love to hear your best thing that you've learnt so far this weekend. If you can narrow it down to one or two things. Far away, we'll start over here with Mel. And then I'm going to do one final process for you.
Hi everyone, and Jamie again, Mel here again. I just want to thank you for all the info you and others shared here on the stage this weekend. I just want to add a little bit of thing to that baby bucket thing, if I may. Oh man, I just hate it when you give away this little piece of advice for free, because I can probably charge a few $1,000s for that, plus some ongoing free, not free, but ongoing commissions. So yeah, thanks for that. That's valuable, really.
Yeah, and it's true. That's why I'm not invited to financial planning conferences. That's why the journalists that are on the payroll, secret payroll of the financial planning industry, write articles to try and discredit me and my companies in the industry. But I don't really care. Because at the end of the day, we are making available education so people can make their own decisions. Because that model is old, and I lobbied for over 10 years, and finally ASIC decided to do something about that industry, and they are planning on banning the commissions, even though that's, or reducing the commissions, because financial planners, they basically, charge commission ongoing for the life of the products. And I always had issues with that business model. Nowhere else in the world, even Richard Branson said, it's ridiculous the fees that people pay on super and managed funds in Australia. It's a gravy train, and the banks, mainly the banks, control 90% of the financial planning industry. But it's been good to see. I was just ahead of a trend, and now the trend is the self-managed super. People set up their own managed own self-managed super fund and everything. And now you'll read in the papers all the scare campaigns by the regulators that are pushed by these lobbyists or the big industries. If you read it, you think Basically, it almost sounds like it's illegal to invest in super with, in property and super. And I've wrote a few articles saying there's nothing wrong with doing that. Why should people be told otherwise? It's a hell of a lot safer than investing in managed funds that pay commission forever, whether they make you money or not. So yeah, I think my issues with the financial planning industry are well publicised, and
I'm happy to step up to shift the whole financial planning industry. So no, I'm totally with you on that.
And there's a lot of financial planners and the good financial planners, the ones that actually have a PhD in results, are actually investors themselves, so they can speak from some experience, and they're focused on education, not just selling. Make sense? They're the better financial planners. And a lot of them have shifted, and a lot of them are now recommending property, etc., where before they would just steer so many baby boomers into managed funds, yet properties where most people made their wealth. It was just crazy because they'd use all these examples that were just not accurate. But that's what happens if you have the idea of the academic world is that you have to have a piece of paper to be able to have any credibility. I mean, anyone can pretty much get licensed and be qualified to give generic financial advice. It's no big deal. But do they have a PhD in results? And most of them don't. And that's what I've pushed for in that industry, saying, well, okay, if they're going to be licensed, how about you make them have to achieve X amount of investing results so the clients could see that they are actually investors? Or are they investing in the product they're promoting themselves? Most of them haven't even done that. Remember, the typical financial planner is employed by the bank and earns maybe $60,000, $70,000 a year. That's a typical financial planner. Mark Boros is another one that's very anti that industry. Most people are because they can see through it. But anyhow, you guys know that. Speaking to the converted, I always say you don't need a financial planner, you need a financial education. And I'm happy to stand by that. Doesn't mean you can't use financial professionals, accountants, etc. To help you, but you have to be ultimately responsible. And there is a big trend now because most people, especially Australians, want to take charge of their own investing. And you should. Okay. Who else want to share? Yep, down here. Best thing?
My best thing here is not just the cash flow stuff, but for me, I'm just finishing school. I had my last exam about 2 weeks ago. Wow. And so for me...
How come you're not at the Gold Coast?
Because I'm here. Look, I'm ahead of the game, but...
True. Give me a hand for that, by the way. After some of the things that I've seen on the Gold Coast last week at schoolies, I would agree you're well ahead of the game.
Yeah. For me, it's really changing my environment because, I mean, I've got friends that I'm the go-to guy, as in, solve my problems, here, let me complain about all of this, and I'll listen and I'll help solve it. But at the end of the day, I'm feeling drained and not feeling like this relationship or friendship with them is working. Yeah. So for me, what I really get out of this is I'm able to just cut ties with these friends, say, don't cross this line. I'm going to go and make some success for myself. You don't have to hold me back. I'm just going to keep going, and I don't need to listen to your problems now. So I'm really happy that I don't have to listen to them anymore.
Very good. And maybe use some tact and diplomacy when you explain that. Otherwise, and certainly don't say, Jamie told me to tell you, go. Who else wanted to share? Yeah, Max.
Hello. Right. So, a few quick things. The cash flow game. I've told a fair amount of people about this, but for those who have not heard, play cash flow. It is more than just a game. It is a simulator, and if I may be a bit of a wanker here, it transcends. It's quite transcendent. It really is. My words cannot do it justice. You can play it for free online, no excuses.
And when we talk about test and measure, it's a great game for that, getting you thinking under pressure situations, for having to make a decision, financial decision, because most people aren't used to making those decisions.
And the term compassionate capitalist, thanks for saying that. I'll be using that myself.
Are you at uni?
No,
I was going to say, if you were, tell your uni friends as well. It's funny because when people at uni, they tend to be more left of politics.
Yeah.
And then as they grow up and they have to become financially responsible,
Yeah.
they usually move more centre-right of politics.
Yeah.
Even Murdoch was like that. He used to be total left-wing. Now if you read News Corp papers, you think, how could he ever been total left-wing? Because he's total right-wing now. But it's interesting because once we have to, the idea of socialism and stuff comes a lot from our school system, as I talked about, and uni, but it's changing a lot also because the Mark Zuckerbergs of the world have inspired so many college or university students to go the theory of socialism, become an entrepreneur. So it's really helped change that, where people are becoming more accountable and responsible for their own lives and not believing in some delusional theory that just doesn't work.
Yeah, because I think socially we've been conditioned to think that capitalism and compassion are mutually exclusive,
Separated
and
things,
I've believed that for a long time. But when
there's another word you can add to that, which I like about Mark Zuckerberg, is a social entrepreneur. Is the other part of that.
And thanks for teaching us about the New Rich strategies. I'm glad to be a part of the New Rich, so thank you very much.
You're welcome. Give me a hand. Who else wants to share? We'll go right over here. Yep, far away.
Good afternoon, guys. My name's Morgan. I'm actually a personal trainer starting out, but listening to Mr. Pat Messini earlier today, he talked about his childhood as an example, being abused by his father, and being able to hear someone talk like that and see where he is now, not actually being a criminal. It's fantastic. And I take that back to my personal training. I can see that people's past can actually be changed. I know it's not financial, but that I took a massive amount from.
Yeah. That's very powerful.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Give me a hand. So as we talked about yesterday, we may not always be able to change our past, but we can certainly change our perception of our past, which effectively changes the way we perceive it and changes our future. Because so many people are, what's holding them back towards their future is their past. And sometimes we have to let some things go or change the story is the other way to look at it. And a lot of you this weekend have changed your story. Especially when I did exercise yesterday, remember, where you go back to things in the past that may have had a negative attachment to look at it differently with emotional intelligence. It might have been the first day I think we covered that. And then we can look at it in a different light and be more emotionally intelligent. Because there is things that are going to be difficult, challenging in life. We just don't want to dwell on it too much. We want to still live and enjoy life and not be a victim. Remember, is it true? We're not victims unless we choose to be a victim. And that you can say, well, Jamie, you don't understand. I've had some bad things happen to me and other people did the wrong thing. True. But whenever we hold anger and resentment towards them or for doing that or whatever, then who's that really hurting? Yeah, so when you forgive someone, you're not really forgiving them for themselves, you're forgiving them for yourself. Does that make sense? As hard as that may. It doesn't mean that you're accepting that their actions might have been right. That's not what you're accepting. But you're saying, you know what? It's time to move on. Life is a gift, and why should I be bitter and angry or bitching and moaning or upset and moping around or whatever emotion that's disrespectful to life? Fair enough? And you've seen the example with Tony, even losing his 2 legs as a kid, that didn't have to mean anything other than what meaning he attached to it. Does that make sense? And he chose to be emotionally intelligent and lives an extraordinary life. No doubt a better life than he would have had if that tragic event didn't happen to him, or we could look at that gift that happened to him. And often the worst things that we think happen to us are actually wrapped up in disguise or actually a gift. Is it true? And I look back in my life, even in business and different things, I realized at the time were challenging. Actually, I'm so glad that happened. I mean, years ago I had disputes with the ASIC and all sorts of unfair, unjust things went on. But in hindsight, that was the best thing that could ever happen, because that actually grew my career and made me more determined to say, you know what, do I really believe in this? Do I really want to stand up for this? And I said, you know what, no a bureaucrat in some government department is going to stand between me and my mission. So I just become more committed than ever. So it was actually a gift. So sometimes we're pissed off about something, we should be excited. It's true. We should be like, thank you so much for for what happened. Remember, it's all what meaning we attach to something. Who else wanted to share? Okay, let's go here.
I'd like to say that I got a lot of meaning from what you were saying, from gratitude and thankfulness. And I actually made a phone call to my parents today and just thanked them and just said, look, I'm so grateful for everything you've done for me for my whole life and where I am today. And I just felt this great weight come off my shoulders, and it was probably the best thing I've done in my life. Thank you, Jamie.
Like the words to the song yesterday, you might remember if you were here, in the living years. Remember that when you were sitting in your cottage? Say it to them, why in the living years, why they're alive effectively. Who else wanted to share? Yeah, over here. Yeah, you, far away.
I just had a question.
Yeah.
With the certification, like in this day and age, you really do need that piece of paper from your university or whatever to prove that you have the skill, even though I agree that your education is far more worthwhile.
Yeah.
Is there a reason you don't do like full business certifications and things like that?
Yeah, so I don't know whether it was mentioned, but we have launched a certification for 20th century education. So you can sit an online exam. You have to be a 20th century member or your parents. And obviously because you have to watch the DVDs and attend this seminar, so you should know the answers to the questions. But yeah, you can sit an online exam, and there's also assignments to submit. And if you get more than a 90% pass, you'll be certified and you'll get a certificate. And then you can you add that to your CV and resume, and then we'll be doing more TV campaigns next year, highlighting to employers, etc., the benefit of people that have a 21st century education certification, because it says what modules you've passed in. And I know as an employer, and I know most companies, they're looking for people that show self-initiative. And if you can show on your resume or etc. that you have invested in your own personal education, you develop skills in these particular areas, then you become a much more valuable asset to a company than just a piece of paper from university. Both are important. But that's why we've added that certification. You would have got a form on that yesterday, I think, if you want to do it. I think it's $500 or something to become certified. So it's not that expensive. And that's why we're adding that, because in our world, we do like to have those pieces of paper. As I was using an example, the Melbourne University, they've just, 2 years ago, I think they launched free online university courses. And they got 300,000 people signed up. And they were very happy with that. But effectively, and then you can do Stanford and Harvard, even a lot of Africans do, etc. They do it online for free. It's free to, but if you want the degree, the piece of paper, you have to pay hundreds of thousands of dollars. What it's effectively saying, the main reason people go to university is not to learn, it's to get that piece of paper. In fact, they say, the learning part, we'll give it to you for free. That's what they're effectively saying, For the piece of paper, that'll be a couple $100,000. You know what I'm saying? And it's crazy, but that's the way, because that piece of paper is important. So that's why we created the certification. So you can, and most of you guys don't really care about the certification because you're doing it because why do you come here? 100% of you come here because you want to learn, okay? But there's a whole nother market out there. That's why we're creating a certification, and people go, I want to get the piece of paper, I want to get the certification. So I'm going to do that because that's valuable to me getting a higher paid job one day, which is great because it's just adding more value to it. The fact they're also going to learn incredible skill sets is even better. So just taking it more mainstream. Yeah, because it is important. Who else? We'll take two more. Okay, second from the back there.
I just was surprised because I'm from Russia, and I was impressed by your knowledge of the Russian market, especially in property. And like my brother came up with the idea to separate the land, because we have a land with already a house, and kind of the rest of the land that kind of sits there for nothing. Mm-hmm. and he got the construction rights like a couple of weeks ago, but now the only problem is actually just to put the house in it, because like the market is really good, and I just realized that for me it's not really the priority to get an investment for myself, but long term just to help my brother to collect the funds and just stick it there. It'll be like much more worth for us as a family. And I kind of made the decision from today that I'm going to stick to that, and we'll make it very quickly. So it was really worth coming.
That's great. Well
yeah,
done.
Well.
Yeah. I love Russia. I think it's one of the best countries on the planet, and I have many, many Russian friends. Siberia, in particular, I think is great. Yes. Okay. Thank you. Who else? One more. Who really wants to share? Let's go down the back, white shirt.
Thanks, Jamie. One thing I think that gets looked over and is really important for people who aren't actually here and who might watch the DVDs is the atmosphere and environment.
Yeah.
So the most liberating thing for me has been to, and I've said this to a lot of you that I have met, is to actually meet all these people who are like-minded, and everyone here is supportive and encouraging and fostering the whole environment. And I think that's the best advertisement to what you're doing, and is the fact that you can fill a room with people who are so eager and all thinking along the same lines. So for me, that's been the greatest thing that I've taken out of the event. So thanks for that.
Oh, you're welcome. So the power of an environment is very critical as well, because sometimes you're out there on your own, you think, does anyone else think this way? And it is great to see it, because also, you know, when we're doing the board breaking, it's like the references, when you're seeing other people do it, it just builds and builds your references, because to form a new belief, it's like, you know, the legs on a table. If you only got, if you don't have any, if a table has no legs, it's not going to stand up. So when you're forming a new belief, you have no references to support that belief. If you've never broken a board before or never done a certain activity before. But when you see other people do it, it's like putting a leg underneath the table, another leg and another leg, and eventually it's a Parthenon. Because you have so many references. Hang on, other people are doing this. If other people are doing it, what's my excuse? So the peer pressure reverses. Instead of peer pressure, most people have got, don't try anything, or don't take a risk, or be careful, or everything's a scam, or nothing works. To the other peer pressure going, oh, what's your excuse? Why haven't you done it yet? Well, just do it. It's just go and do it. Take action. You know? So it's a positive peer pressure. And that's the critical thing in life. And that's why I talked about, remember the iceberg? You know, most of it's underwater. What's the biggest thing for long-term change? Changing environment. Okay? And that's why every couple of years we do the platinum trips, etc. We didn't mention that this weekend, but you'll hear about them at times. And we take people away so people can be in an environment that goes to crazy parts of the world. We've been to Antarctica before. We've been on the world's largest cruise ship around the Caribbean for trips. We've been to Rio de Janeiro for the Carnival, and it's just platinum members, 20th century members can become platinum members and spend a week of learning, but also adventure and lifestyle. Because we're teaching lifestyle, so you want to have a reward to look forward to be able to do that.